SteamVR versus Meta. I've had this question asked quite a few times if there's really much of a difference between developing for the SteamVR platform versus Meta or Oculus. There are some pretty common differences between headsets that run on SteamVR and headsets that run on Meta or Oculus. So in this video, I want to break down some of the common positives and ups of these different types of headsets and some of the negatives and minor annoyances that I've run into while using headsets for each of these two different platforms. But before we go ahead and jump into that, if you enjoyed this video and want to see even more just like this one, be sure to like and subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, let me know down below, is there a headset that you personally enjoy using and why? I am generally curious to see what kind of headsets you guys use and what your reasoning for that is. With that, let's go ahead and start off with SteamVR. Now, even though SteamVR covers a very large variety of headsets, a lot of these headsets have a lot of very similar functionality. For example, something you see across most SteamVR headsets is that they rely on external tracking using base stations that you place in your room. This leads into the very first point that I have for SteamVR, and that is that it is extremely reliable when taking on and off a VR headset. When developing, you are often going to be throwing a headset on and off repeatedly in order to make mechanics or make minor little adjustments and then go back into the VR headset in order to test this. One of the big benefits of using a SteamVR headset is that you don't have to worry about tracking being lost or any sort of issues like that. So long as your headset is somewhere within the range where it can see a base station, your tracking is going to get picked up like that. Your environment's going to be set up exactly as it was and you'll have no issues. You'll just jump right back into previewing. It really is a huge time saver and is a huge benefit when using any sort of SteamVR headset. Now, I do want to note there are, of course, a few exceptions, one of which being the Vive Cosmos, which has the option for inside-out tracking. But if you look at a lot of headsets, a lot of them still rely on that external base station tracking. Now, while you may question why we still use these base stations in SteamVR headsets, there's actually a very good reason for this, and this also drives into the second huge positive for SteamVR, and that is the hardware support. A huge benefit to using SteamVR is we have a lot more hardware that is available to us in order to develop with. For example, things like full body tracking, face tracking, VR locomotion, haptic vests. A lot of these devices are solely compatible with SteamVR headsets. So if you're looking to develop something like a social platform, this is a huge step up because this allows for you to fully immerse a player within their environment. And doing so allows for that social interaction to become just that much more immersive with other players. Now, let's say that you are looking to build the most immersive experiences possible, like for a social interaction game. You want players to be able to jump in and explore some amazing scenery all together, and you want for it to look as amazing as possible. Well, that's something that you're going to get a lot better with a PCVR only headset. One of the huge benefits to using a PCVR headset is that you're not as limited to hardware as you are on most modern Meta or Oculus headsets. Now, this can kind of be seen as a positive or negative depending on you and your hardware, but because of this, you are limited to what your PC is capable of and not to what your Oculus or Meta headset is capable of. What this means is you can get much better results when developing your VR applications. You can make absolutely beautiful landscapes that span much further and are just much more detailed than what you can get on a Meta or Oculus standalone headset. But this can also be a negative depending on your hardware. If you're not running the most modern, hardcore gamer PC that's currently out there, you're obviously not going to really benefit from this. You might actually even find that you get poor experiences on your PC than you may even get on your Meta or Oculus headset. In addition, you're also kind of bound by a wire for most PCVR headsets. Now, again, this is something that can kind of go either way depending on you and your play space. I've found that you can actually manage wires pretty well and they don't typically tend to get in the way too much. Every once in a while, of course, you may have to go back and untangle your cord, but I haven't really found any terrible issues other than an occasionally tangling cord around my feet. Now, unfortunately, at this point, this is kind of where a lot of the positives kind of end for SteamVR. Don't get me wrong, SteamVR is a fantastic headset. However, it's not something that I'm going to recommend to a lot of people who are looking to develop VR for the very first time. And that's really for one specific reason. Price. SteamVR headsets are commonly much more expensive than the most modern Oculus or Meta headsets. You're talking in some cases spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars to get base stations, controllers, and headsets alone. And if you're looking to support additional hardware, you also need to keep in mind you may have to spend additional money on even more base stations, trackers, additional hardware such as haptic suits or treadmills. A lot of this can certainly add up, and it'll add up very quickly for a lot of these SteamVR headsets. So that's something that's definitely to be kept in mind when you're looking to budget for your first SteamVR game. Now, if that's not enough, you also have to keep in mind that you need to have enough room to be able to set up all this hardware in. For example, the base stations alone, you're going to need a minimum of 2 in order to have some very good tracking. This means that you need plenty of space between your base stations and wherever your play space is. If you're in a very small space, you may find that this is more difficult for you than if you had some giant open warehouse. But you also have to keep in mind as well that you also need to make sure that your space is set up very well for a lot of these SteamVR headsets. A huge issue that I first ran into when I first got my own SteamVR headset is that my space did not really work very well for SteamVR. Because a lot of these headsets use external base station tracking, if you have any sort of reflective surfaces in your environment, that can really affect your tracking performance. For example, in my old room, I actually used to have one giant window against a single wall, and this one window would affect all of my tracking in a huge spot in the center of my play space if I didn't have it covered. So you have to keep in mind that a lot of these reflective surfaces, especially if you have many of them or they're particularly large, can have a huge effect over the performance that you get when trying to use SteamVR tracking. So with all that being said and done, you really have to keep in mind as well that because SteamVR headsets may take up more time to set up, and can be a little bit more sensitive depending on your play space, it can be a little bit more difficult to move your SteamVR play space from one location to another. If you're going to be using a SteamVR headset, you should really keep in mind that this is probably going to be a more permanent one area type of thing and not something that you're going to be taking around with you a whole lot. However, that is where Oculus and Meta really shine. Oculus and Meta's current VR headset, the Quest 2, actually functions using inside-out tracking as opposed to the outside-in that you see on a lot of SteamVR headset. What this means is that because everything is inside-out tracked, you don't require any external base stations, you don't require any sort of additional tracking setup. You simply tap a controller to the ground, set up where your boundaries are, and you're all good to go just like that. It's a lot easier to set up than what you would experience with SteamVR, making this much more portable and a lot easier to set up if you're a first-time VR user. Now, because everything is handled on the headset itself, this actually makes it a standalone headset as well. And in case you're unfamiliar with standalone headsets, that means that everything is capable of running on this one headset alone. In addition, if you're not looking to become a developer right now or maybe even ever, and you're just looking to jump into VR for the very first time, because everything is handled on the Quest 2 headset alone, this actually makes it the most budget-friendly and easily accessible option for many new VR users. For only $300, you can buy this one headset and you require no PC in order to jump into VR for the very first time. This makes it a very appealing option for a lot of new users as well. This easily makes up the Quest 2 as one of the most popular headsets available, and because of that, everybody who is in the VR space most likely already has a Quest 2. So if you're looking to develop for the largest audience possible, this is definitely the option just for you. Now, if you are looking to become a developer, but you don't have some high-end PC, this is also where Oculus and Meta really shine as well. Because everything runs on the PC itself, you don't really need a VR-capable PC in order to actually develop VR applications. If you have even just some simple little laptop, one of the huge benefits is so long as you can package for Android, you are actually able to just load your project up onto the Quest 2 and test it all there. With a Meta or Oculus headset, it doesn't matter what hardware you have so long as you have something that's capable of designing your games. And that's all that you need. So it's a lot easier to get in for a lot of new developers as well. However, it should be kept in mind that this is a longer process to package a project and throw it onto the Quest 2, as it is to simply start it up on your PC and have everything work just fine. Now, not everything is great about Oculus and Meta, and really I found that there are only two main issues. Really only one if you're willing to look past the other. Let me start with the issue that's probably going to be more concerning to more people, and that's going to be hardware support. You're not going to get any sort of full body tracking, face tracking, or really a lot of additional features other than maybe a haptic vest that works through an audio jack working on a Quest 2 like you can on a SteamVR headset. So if you're looking to design for full body tracking, or you are looking to design for full facial capture, you're probably not going to get that on the Quest 2 without doing a lot of additional work in order to get your Quest 2 to run on SteamVR in the first place and work just fine with your base stations and that software that you're trying to run. Now, this last negative, I really decided to add in because while I don't think it should fully influence your decision over what platform you decide to support, I do definitely think it's something that should be taken into consideration, especially since I know it's influenced others that I've tried talking into getting into VR for their very first time. And that's Meta themselves. In case you were unfamiliar, Facebook has some pretty questionable history when it comes to users and your digital privacy. So it really kind of makes sense that there's those out there who simply don't trust Facebook or Meta. So it's a fully understandable argument if you simply just don't want to own any Meta headset. Meta is a pretty good headset, and it's the most affordable headset on the market. So while I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy the Meta headset right now, I think it's something that you should definitely consider if you are looking to develop your own VR games, or you're just looking to get into VR for the very first time. But let me know what you guys think down below. I want to know what kind of headsets do you guys use and why you guys enjoy using them. Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. And I also want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters who you should see it on screen right now. And with that, I'll see you in the next reality.